Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for another episode of Mind Your Puckin' Business with your host, Jeffrey Krensman.
Thank you, Dougie Sticks, coming to you from the beautiful studios of Undefeated Media here in Bergen County, New Jersey. This is the Mind. You're welcome over there. This is Mind Your Puckin' Business podcast, brought to you, of course, by our good friends at the Bamboozled Project. We encourage you to check them out. Website across the screen if you're watching the video feed of the podcast, and that is easy to remember, thebamboozledproject.com. Also easy to remember, 4 letters, MYPB saves you 25% if you use MYPB as your promo code when you go visit our good friends at the Bamboozled Project. And we thank them, as always, for their sponsorship of our podcast. This is episode number 112, Ciento Doce on the Spanish dial.
See,
and we are taping this episode. And I feel like with playoff coming, we need to say when we're on, because people, if you listen to it in a couple of days, will be like, wow, they're behind. We are taping this episode on a different day. We usually are on Tuesday mornings. This week, because the NHL playoffs start tonight, we are on today, Monday, April 17th. You can send your questions at any time to mypbshow@gmail.com. You can also DM us your questions. You can send us your questions many different ways. If you want to interact with us, which a lot of you guys do on Instagram, and we appreciate it, you can always find us there. And you can listen to the show on a couple different platforms, actually more than a couple, different platform options out there. You want to see the video feed, YouTube is the best place to go for that. If you're in your car and you want to listen to us later in the week or whenever that may be, iTunes and Spotify, you can stream us there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
For 112 episodes.
112 episodes. There is now so much.
There is an end point.
Well, what is scary about it is if you think about it, there is now so much MYPB content out there. If you figure like 40 minutes an episode times 100.
Let's round that to an hour.
Okay, round to an hour. It's 112 hours, almost a week. Yeah. You could like literally just binge instead of binging on your favorite Netflix show. Yeah. And my wife and I are starting to get back into Ted Lasso because it's back out. And I know you're happy about that. You could also binge on MYPB. All right, today, yes, go ahead.
There's an episode. Where are you in Ted Lasso?
We're beginning of season 3. We got some time.
Well, I mean, this is like season 3, episode 2. Jacked me up. The biggest I've ever been jacked up, ready to go. A little bit of I'm not going to ruin it for you, but I was just like, oh yes, let's go. And then I was like, okay, but I was jacked up.
Good.
You're going to get jacked up.
Speaking of jacked up.
Yeah.
Today starts the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs, and that is why, as I mentioned before, we are on Monday this week, because the NHL playoff starts tonight. And before we get into the Rangers, we'll get into the Rangers Devils. We're also going to go around the league. A couple of people have asked us to do kind of a quick predictions for the other 7 series, and we will do that this morning. But before we get into that, and specifically, I just want to say what we've said a couple times throughout the years here. The Stanley Cup is the hardest trophy to win in sports. There's plenty of people that I know, and you all know people like this also, and you may be one of them who listens, that you may say to yourself, well, I like hockey, but I'll start watching it in the playoffs. And there's a reason. Playoff hockey, there's nothing better. Overtime, sudden death in playoff hockey is amazing. It is not amazing if your team is involved in it, because it's incredibly stressful. But like tonight, when the Rangers don't play, if any of the 4 games that are on the docket tonight go into overtime, I'll be tuning in. I mean, it is just awesome stuff. Yeah. So the Stanley Cup begins, the playoffs begin tonight. It is a 7 to 8 week marathon. It is not a sprint. The team that comes out of it, out of the 16, whichever is the one team that remains standing at the end, really earns it, going through physical series after physical series and grinding. It's awesome. So whatever team you do root for, and I do know that there are plenty of non-Ranger fans that listen to us, and also plenty of people I've learned that aren't fans of any of the teams in the tri-state area, enjoy it. Just enjoy the Stanley Cup playoffs. It's a special 2 months in sports. If you're a hockey fan, it's the greatest that we have, and it starts tonight. So the New York Rangers, we had been talking about this here for a while. It was looking very likely. The odds were in the favor they were going to play the Devils in the first round. Last week, it got a little bit dimmer on those odds, but it still seemed like it was going to happen, but we weren't as optimistic. And, of course, in typical fashion, it comes down to the last night of games that the Devils and Carolina played for us to determine that we were right all along, and they will be matching up against the New Jersey Devils in the first round. So there's a couple different ways we could go about doing this. So I'm going to run through some points, and everybody's been asking, I don't know if you saw this, what's the prediction? What's the prediction? And I have been very good at not giving it away because I've told people, I've learned, tease it, right?
Yeah.
If you tune in Monday, I will give you my official series prediction, which I will give you in a couple minutes. But all the pressure on this series, I don't care what anyone says, all the pressure on the series is on the Rangers. Look, I know the Devils had a great year. I know the Devils are the higher seed. I get it. The Devils were not supposed to be here at all. So to me, all the pressure's on the Rangers, who are in a win now mode. You went out and got Patrick Kane. You went out and got Vladimir Tarasenko. You were 2 games away of going to the Stanley Cup Finals last year. You're trying to get back there. Pretty much all of the pieces last year that got you there are still here. The pressure's all on the Rangers. If I'm the Devils right now, and you lose this series, yeah, you'd be annoyed because the last thing you want to do is lose to your hated rival in the Rangers. But you've had a great year. To me, if the Rangers go out in the first round, we're not going to sit here and say that they had a great year. We're going to say what a failure it was because they lost in the first round, regardless of who it was to. I was thinking yesterday, the Devils remind me a little bit of the Rangers last year. The Rangers kind of had a year last year, a regular season in 2021, 2022, that was above and beyond any expectation we would have had for them. And they finished second in the Metro. And the Devils now finished second in the Metro. So the Devils kind of remind me of just playing with house money and being there. So where do the Rangers have some advantages? If you kind of look at the series and you say to yourself, all right, let's dissect it a little bit. Where do the Rangers have an advantage? I think where this matchup is good for the Rangers, and it's not to say that this is the matchup I wanted, because if you listened last week, I didn't. I kind of changed my mind when I saw how Carolina was playing. But I think one of the things that works towards the Rangers' advantage here, Dougie, and you can tell me if you agree with this, is the Devils are not a physical team at all. I believe the Devils are the 27th out of 31 teams in the NHL when it comes to hitting. So that bodes well for the Rangers because the Rangers are not themselves the most physical team. As we've seen in the past, I always come back to the Tom Wilson, Artemi Panarin story from 2 years ago. The Rangers can get beat around physically. That probably will not happen in this series. So that is one thing for the Rangers that I think helps. The second thing is Igor Shesterkin is the better goaltender than Vanecek. That is not a slight on Vitek Vanecek, who has had as good of a year as any Devil fan could have expected, and he could be very good in the playoffs. We just don't know because he hasn't really had playoff experience. But I do like the fact that I know that I have the advantage, or I should have the advantage, I should say, in what is arguably the most important position on the ice. Because if you remember, and if you follow the Stanley Cup playoffs, you know this. And if you forget it every year, you're reminded of it, that usually the teams that have the better goaltending wins. Not always, but usually. And one step further, usually the team that wins the Stanley Cup has a good goalie. Like if you look, we won't use last year's example, but Vasilevsky in Tampa, previous years, always a good goalie, usually gets the job done. Yeah. So that is where I think the Rangers have some advantage in the fact that the Devils are not the most physical team, and the Rangers have the advantage in goaltending. Now, the Devils do, because they're not physical, you say to yourself, well, if the Devils are not a physical team, what are they? And that is that they're a speed team, and that's really given a lot of teams fits this year when the Devils have played them. Their forecheck is very good. The Rangers, who in the past month, you've heard me complain about it here, have been incredibly sloppy in the defensive end. You cannot give this Devils team second chances by being sloppy. If you're in doubt, if you're the Rangers and you're in doubt on the defensive end in this series, just get the puck out. I don't even care if you take an icing. You don't want Jack Hughes. You don't want some of these guys, Jesper Bratt. You don't want them getting second chances. I can nullify that. I can neutralize that. And I can end that if I just get the puck out of the zone. So they've had trouble with this in the last 6 weeks in particular. Ryan Lindgren is back. Is he at 100%? Probably not, but he's healthy enough that he can play and make a difference in the defensive end. And hopefully his return will help tidy things up back there in their own zone. So also, I remind you, not that anyone needs to be reminded because there was an Instagram clip of me saying this last week, but I'm just going to say it again. When Chris Drury traded for Vladimir Tarasenko in February and he traded for Patrick Kane in March, they were done specifically for this time of year. Patrick Kane, Vladimir Tarasenko were not brought here for March regular season games. I understand people want to get on Patrick Kane, and if the body of work that you're going to evaluate is only going to be the regular season, then you have a right to, I guess, complain about it. But if Patrick Kane comes here and now steps up like people say that he's capable of doing, you'll be fine with it. So hopefully those two step up in the moments where they were actually brought here to step up. The other thing that I was wondering, and this is, I'm going to take some blame for this because I haven't picked up on this. Chris Kreider and 50-goal Chris Kreider, we all knew he would regress this year, but he hasn't really been a factor. This would be a wonderful time for 50-goal Chris Kreider from last year to start scoring some goals here in front of the net. So let's hope that that is something that happens. What is before we get into my prediction on the series, anything you want to add, throw in?
You already know I'm not happy about this matchup so early.
Well, let me before you go any further, let me clarify what you mean, because I know what you mean. You wanted this matchup to happen, but you were really like steadfast on it being in the second round.
At
you
least.
Didn't want it. Well, it couldn't be because the brackets in the same division.
Well, for the layman's out there, yes.
Yeah. Okay. You wanted it to be later in the playoffs as feasibly possible.
If it was possible, Stanley Cup. I know it's not possible. Stanley Cup.
That's
finals,
what you would want.
But that would be ideal. But it's not possible. But yes, as late into the series as possible. I feel like both teams had a tremendous season, and it's a shame that they have to match up so early, and only one of them can move on to the next round.
Well, it's not a shame that only one of them can move on if your team wins. It's a shame that only one of them can move on if your team loses. So here's the schedule, and the NHL was in a very interesting point. And I don't know if you know this. Actually, you probably don't. Okay. So game 1 is tomorrow night in Newark, Tuesday. Game 2 is Thursday in Newark. Now, here's the problem. Game 3 has to be at the Garden, right? As we know, because the Rangers are home. Game 2 was Thursday. Game for the Knicks are home Friday and Sunday. So you couldn't go Friday and Sunday. You couldn't put the Ranger game there.
I also heard a rumor. Are you going to go in depth into the rumor? I don't want to. I don't know if the rumor.
Go ahead.
They had to like boot Billy Joel too.
They did. So Billy Joel was scheduled to play, his residency at the Garden on this Saturday night.
Residency?
His residency. He plays every month. Yeah, you didn't know this?
I didn't know that.
Where you been living?
I know they do concerts, but I didn't
No,
know
he's there every month.
I didn't know it was like Vegas.
He's there every month. But there is a clause in Billy Joel's contract with the Garden that in the months of April, May, and June, the Garden has the right to boot him, or not boot him, have his dates rescheduled if it has to conflict with a playoffs. And the Garden was in a tough spot, and we all saw this coming, because once you knew that game 2 was Thursday and the Knicks were Friday and Sunday and Billy Joel was Saturday, the NHL couldn't sit there and say, well, we'll do game 1 Tuesday, game 2 Thursday, and then game 3 on Monday. That was never an option.
Yeah.
So what they did is they put game 3 at the Garden Saturday. Game 4 is Monday, and Billy Joel now goes to Tuesday.
Wow. So all the people were going to go Saturday night, Billy Joel.
You have to be annoyed. I was thinking that, and I felt bad thinking if you were from out of town, think about it. You have a trip to New York, right?
Yeah,
you're coming to the city. You have a Saturday night show, and I know we take it for granted.
Your trip, and you're like getting the hotel.
We take it for granted because we can go see Billy Joel at the Garden any month, right? But if you're from out of town, I'm sure
you might not be there on Tuesday.
I'm sure there are plenty of people that have tickets for a Saturday night Billy Joel show that do a weekend trip to New York, and now you are left with tickets for Tuesday night at the Garden. And you now have to, which you could certainly find something else to do Saturday night, but that wasn't your preference because you wanted to go see Billy Joel.
And you're downgrading, the things you put in your system on a Saturday are probably way different than the things you put in your system on a Tuesday.
Right. Correct.
Especially for a Billy Joel
now,
concert.
if you're Billy Joel, right? Here's the other thing. I saw someone on Twitter the other day was like, Billy Joel must be outraged. Billy Joel doesn't give he don't care. He's getting paid the same amount. Now he's freed up on Saturday night. I'm sure Billy Joel's got plenty of better things he could do. He shows up on Tuesday night. Whether the Garden now, let's say instead of having 18,200 people that they would have had on Saturday, maybe it has, 15,000 because it's a Tuesday. Yeah. He's still getting paid the same on his residency. He don't care. The only people that get screwed in the deal are the people with the tickets. And you do feel bad. But it was a whole thing for once they knew the schedule, and they didn't say when the games at the Garden were like, well, are they really going to do it? Are they really going to bump Billy Joel? Are they really going to do it? And then one of the Ranger beat writers came out and said there's a clause in the contract. And then once you kind of saw that, you knew what was happening.
Just for those months or all year round?
No, just for those months, playoffs. just for the
So
playoffs.
you don't think they would put spoiler, not a spoiler, but check out the movie Tetris on Apple TV. It goes into contracts and stuff, but like they should have put a clause like if they were smart, they would have done it all year round.
Well, they don't. It's just because the playoff schedule comes out like spur of the moment. So
Bump Billy.
here's your schedule for round one, Ranger Devils. Game one, as I mentioned, Tuesday night in Newark. Game two, Thursday night in Newark. Game three, Saturday night in the Garden, 8 o'clock national TV playoff game versus Devils. The atmosphere in the Garden Saturday night, if you're going, is going to be legitimately insane. Like if you've never experienced a playoff game and you've always said to yourself, wow, I wonder what it's like, that's the one you go to.
That's the one.
Because that's got to be out of control in the Garden on Saturday night. Yeah. Game 4, Monday night in the Garden, and then all, if necessary, games, but let's be real, this is probably not going to be a 4-game sweep. They go back to Newark for game 5 next Thursday. Then game 6 is back again on a Saturday at the Garden, right? They don't know if that's a night game yet, but still it'll be Saturday in the Garden. And then if there is a game 7, it goes to Newark on Monday, May 1st for the deciding game. And I say, sitting through a game 7 last year twice, it was on, let's see, the Pittsburgh series and the Carolina series, sitting through a game 7. I just don't want to do it again. It's rough on the body. Now, the Carolina game, the Rangers were all over that. That game was over almost at the end of the first period. But sitting through the Pittsburgh game, where Zibanejad had to tie the goal late in the third, and then Panarin winning in overtime. I don't need to do that. So apparently, we'll put on one of the comments that just came in. It is listed it is printed in the tickets also. Yeah. So if you buy a Billy Joel tickets, the question is, do you read the fine print to see that? Right.
I'm sure they all.
You're planning your trip.
I'm sure they all have a clause to protect them. Like, we could do whatever we want.
Billy Joel could have a cold. Billy Joel could have COVID.
Well, not only Billy Joel, just like Ticketmaster, whoever prints the tickets, they probably have the little fine print. Like.
Okay.
Nothing in this world is guaranteed.
Nothing. So definitely not. So, all right. A couple things before I get into the prediction. I want to say one thing, and it is about tomorrow night because we're talking about the schedule. Tomorrow night is game 1. And I want to say one thing. I want a refresher reminder about game 1. Last year, the Rangers lost game 1 to Pittsburgh at home, and they won the series. The next series, they lost game 1 in Carolina to Carolina, and they came back and won the series. In their third series in the Eastern Conference Finals versus Tampa, they won game 1 at home. They actually won game 1 and 2, and then went on to lose the series. So I just want to put it out there, both sides. One team will obviously win tomorrow night. One team will lose. Whatever team loses is not out of the series, okay? So you want to get game 1. I'm not saying that it doesn't matter if you get the first game. I would love to get the first game. I'll be highly annoyed if they don't. I am just saying as a friendly reminder, because we just experienced this with all 3 series happening last year. Just because you win game 1 does not mean you win the series. And just because you lose game 1 doesn't mean you're going to lose the series. Just a friendly reminder, refresher on game 1.
So how do you feel that game 1 is going to be at the Prudential Center?
It is what it is. You know what? So I think game 1 being away, I like in some ways because it puts more pressure on the home team, right? The home team really has a little bit more pressure, I think, in game 1. The Rangers have been a pretty good road team, so have the Devils for that matter. I don't mind it. Look, home ice to me, the Rangers won game 7 on the road last year. So, and they're going to have a ton. Again, this is not a slight at the Devils because people went nuts when I said this a couple weeks ago. The Rock is going to be filled with tons of Ranger fans. It's not like, it is an away game, but it's also not your typical away game. There's plenty of Ranger fans in the building, including our producer B-Rock is going to be there, I heard.
Yes.
He will be there up in the nosebleeds. You can look for him in his Devil starter jacket.
I'm 50-50 still.
If you're going?
I'm just staring at the screen. I haven't pressed the buy.
You know what it depends on? What? Can I say that? I don't know if I should say this. It depends on how your taxes. No, it depends on how much taxes. So this morning,
I can make it a write-off for a media company.
Yeah, you're a media company. You sure are. So just a friendly reminder on the importance of game 1. It's important, but you don't need game 1 to win the series. All right. So a lot of people have been writing us. I don't know if you've seen.
Yes.
What is or they even in comments. What is your prediction for the Rangers-Devils series? What do you think is going to happen? Now, before I tell you what I think is going to happen, I want to just throw in a couple points. Last year, they played Pittsburgh. I picked them to win. They did. They played Carolina. I picked them to lose. They played Tampa. I picked them to lose. So I don't ever want people to think that this is just a homer show and I just picked the Rangers and the Rangers are going to win the cup. Because why listen? What's the point? If I'm just going to sit here and pick the Rangers every year to win the Cup, what's the point? Oh, Rangers are going to sweep. They'll do 16-0 in the playoffs. I don't do that. I try to be objective, not always right, but I do pick against my team. In this series, here's my thought. So this is also the tightest series line in Vegas. The Devils opened at -120. The Rangers are +100. So the Devils are basically as slight of a favorite as you could possibly be, meaning it's almost a pick 'em. In the playoffs, goaltending always wins. Always. If you have a goalie that plays really well in a series, it always wins. I was thinking back to, I think it was 1997. The Rangers played the Devils and beat them. Mike Richter was out of his mind for 5 games. Igor Shesterkin can do that. The Rangers, to me, are the better team. It doesn't mean that the Devils are not good, and I would be shocked in the least if the Devils won this series. Like, I get the Vegas line. I almost think it is a pick 'em. But to me, I'm picking the team that has more pressure on them to win now. The Devils are playing with house money, and I have the better goalie. My away games are not necessarily away games because I have tons of my own fans in the building. The Devils are not a physical team, which is what the Rangers struggle with. And the Rangers have guys like Kane and Tarasenko. Now, the jury's out on this. They were brought here specifically for this moment. Let me give them a chance to produce in this moment. If I am the Devils and I lose this series, and I said this before, I'm sure you'd be annoyed you lost to the Rangers. You're playing with house money. You just had the biggest point turnaround in the NHL history, right? My prediction here is I think the Rangers win this series in 6 games. I wouldn't be shocked in the least if it goes 7, and I also wouldn't be shocked if the Devils win the series at all. I think it's incredibly close. But you want my pick? What I think is going to happen from evaluating it and trying to break it down, which I tried to do, I think the Rangers win the series in 6 games at the Garden. That's my prediction.
That's a pretty good prediction. Dougie Damas says, Nostradamus, Dougie Damas says that I'm going 7 games and they're winning. The Rangers are going to win in a shootout.
Except here's a problem.
What?
There's no shootouts in the playoffs.
There's no shootouts in the playoffs?
There's
no shootout. Even if they go overtime.
You'll play until 3 you'll be up giving bottles to your daughter. What do you care?
All right. Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, we're going 7 games on this.
So you're going 7 games.
We're going 7 games in the 3rd overtime. We're gonna have a Ranger victory.
Okay, here's why 7 games is a really good argument, because if you go to 6 games, which and I don't think really anybody thinks that the Devils or Rangers are winning the series in 5, right? I mean, we would be shocked if either way that ended. But if you go to a game 6, meaning that one team is up 3 games to 2, the team that wins, that is coming into the game playing to stay alive, can easily win that game. And then you have a game 7. And game 7, I mean, all bets are off in sports, right? Even look back to 2019 with the Cup Finals with St. Louis at Boston game 7, right? In Boston and all that stuff. And St. Louis won it in 1. And last year in Carolina with the Rangers in game 7. You never know. Now, if you go to a game 7, take a quarter out of your pocket and flip a coin. Someone commented on that. We were asking people for predictions on Instagram. Someone said, "I'll just flip a coin," and they're right. I mean, it's as tight of a series as you can get. Just look at the Vegas line on the series. They're basically telling you it is a coin flip.
Yeah.
But I'm going to go and say that if the Rangers can get a split in Newark, okay, here's the Ranger path to doing it. You get at least a split in Newark. You get 1 of 2 in Newark. Maybe you even split in the Garden, okay? Because the Devils are a good road team. So now you're 2-2. You get game 5, or you get your both games at the Garden. You give up game 5, and you're coming home 3-2 in the Garden, which would be insanity on a Saturday if they could clinch against the Devils. That's where you do it. The Rangers would have a better chance to end the series in 6 games, being that they would be the home team in that situation, than they would in 7. It's not to say they couldn't win on the road in game 7, because, again, look at Carolina last year. They just did it. But the Ranger road, I think, is better in 6.
Yeah, it's going to be crazy. It's going to be crazy, exciting. I just, you know how I feel about it. I wish it was.
You wish it was later on. Okay, that's fine. But you know what?
It hurts me. It hurts. It's going to hurt.
You want it to be later on because you want it to be significant, which I can respect. But I will tell you that just because it is Ranger Devils, it is significant, and it doesn't matter where it is.
I know. It's just a shame that both teams have this wonderful season,
but now you're in the playoffs, and someone's got to go. And
I don't want them to go.
Guess what the beauty of hockey is?
Someone's got to go.
Well, no. When the season ends, and let's hope for the Rangers it's not soon, but whenever the season ends, because it will at some point, it comes around again real quick. Training camp opens in September, which is usually, pretty quick.
And that's why I'm picking. That's why I think it'll be the Rangers in 7 because they're built to win now. The Devils, it was like wow, the Devils are here this year, and I think they need a little bit more pieces to the puzzle.
Got it.
Pieces of the puzzle.
So that is my prediction. We are back on next, let's see, Tuesday. So we will be on the morning after Game 4. So the next time we are on, my guess, if you want my guess after Game 4, what we'll be looking at next Tuesday is the series is tied 2-2. That would be my guess.
Yeah.
And if a team is up 3-1 at that point, and the other team has to then win 3 in a row, that's tight. That's hard to do, I think, in this series with how close it is. So we'll see. All right. So that's the prediction. Rangers in 6. A bunch of you asked, and we will do it. I was thinking of doing it, but we definitely will because of the amount of you guys that asked, was to do some predictions around the NHL. What do you think is going to happen in the other series? So let's start with the Eastern Conference in probably what is the most non-exciting series there is in the Eastern Conference, and that is the President's Cup record-setting President's Trophy winning, record-setting Boston Bruins playing the second wild card Florida Panthers. So is the question here this? Is the question, can the Panthers win the series? Or is the question really, how many games can the Panthers actually just win? And the answer to me is 1. I don't expect Florida to win either of the 2 games in Boston. I would think maybe they can get one of the 2 down in South Florida, and the series is ending in Game 5 in Boston. I'm going Boston in 5 here. I don't see any situation where Florida can win. I know that I've read people saying, well, Florida has Matthew Tkachuk. I like Matthew Tkachuk. I do. But I don't think that Matthew Tkachuk can single-handedly eliminate the President's Cup winning Boston Bruins. Why don't we pull up? There's a comment that just came in right as I said it. So Chris and I are thinking on the same line, if you want to pull that up there. And that is Tkachuk versus Marchand and Bertuzzi is going to be electric. It is. It is going to be great. It is almost as appealing to me, that series, is not to see can Florida win, because they can. It's almost like the draw in watching it is to see Tkachuk going on it with Marchand and all these guys and Tyler Bertuzzi and all those, kind of those little punks up there in Boston. But Boston will win this series in 5. The next series, I said a month ago on the show, and I stand by it, even with the Rangers playing the Devils, I think this is the most fascinating series in the first round, and that is Tampa at Toronto. Tampa, of course, has had a tremendous amount of success. They've won the Eastern Conference the last 3 years. They've represented them. The Maple Leafs, just the age-old story, cannot win a playoff series. At what point does it happen? It looks like if Toronto doesn't get out of the first round, the GM up there, Kyle Dubas, is out. The head coach is probably out also. But Toronto has done everything that they can to keep their team together to give another run. The other thing, and I was reading over the weekend about it, if Toronto loses this series, the Maple Leafs team is going to look a lot different next year. All the pressure here is on Toronto to finally get it done. I said last year when I did first round series, I thought Toronto would get it done. They lost in 7. I'm going to go with Toronto again. At some point, a team that is as talented as Toronto is in that market has to win. And at some point, and there's a hint here that I'm going to give you if you listen to us, at some point, a team like the Lightning has to lose a first-round series, has to not win out the Eastern Conference. E.J. Radick was on with us back in February, and he said something very interesting if you listen when he was on our show. He said that John Cooper, the head coach of the Lightning, kept telling him that he has found this year that he has lost, his voice is not being heard as much in the locker room, which happens with coaches. They've been there forever. That is a hint to me that maybe they are not the same. And Toronto, man, if you don't win this series here, man, I don't know what to tell you. I really don't. So Tampa never replaced. That's a very good point. We'll pull that up. Chris just wrote, and Ranger fans know this guy, Ryan McDonough. Tampa never replaced him when they was traded to Nashville, and that is going to be the difference. And it certainly could, because you know that Toronto can throw Marner, Tavares, Matthews, plenty of offensive guys at you, Nylander, and Tampa's not going to have Ryan McDonough anymore. That's a very good point there by Chris. I like Tampa in this series. I'm sorry, Tampa. I like Toronto. I want to say Toronto in 7 because that would be the fitting way to do it, but I just think they're the better team, and I think they win the series in 6. So I like a Toronto in 6 so far and Boston in 5. The next series, I've been saying this for a couple weeks here. Do not sleep on the New York Islanders if they get in at all. Sorokin has had a very good year. And actually, I'll even go as far to say, and it's painful for me to say, that Ilya Sorokin has had as good of a year that has not been talked about enough. He has been excellent. Carolina, we know that was who I wanted the Rangers to play in the first round, has kind of been playing pretty bad the last month and peaking the wrong way. I also think here, Lane Lambert, first-year coach of the Islanders, remember, he was the disciple of Barry Trotz. He was with Barry Trotz's right-hand man forever. He knows playoff hockey. He's been around it. He won a cup in Washington when he was with Barry Trotz. He understands defensive schemes. Remember, Carolina does not have Aho, and they also don't have Pacioretty. I like the Islanders to win the series in an upset. Matter of fact, I think, and I don't bet on hockey, I refuse to. The Islanders on the money line in the series, I think was plus 180 when I saw it the other day. That's a great bet. That's a great value bet. I like the Islanders to win the series in 6 games. I do. So in the Eastern Conference, to recap before we head out west, I like Boston in 5, Toronto in 6, the Rangers in 6, and the Islanders in 6. Now, you were upset that what was I going to say? That they're not playing, they're playing in the first round. If my predictions were right, and again, I wouldn't bet your mortgage on anything I say, I'm just an idiot, but you would have Ranger Islanders in the second round. So if the Rangers and Islanders win, the winner of Ranger Devils,
that's a constellation
that
match?
would be good. It would be good.
Ah, come on. I don't know.
And you know what?
It's not the same.
If the Devils won this, if the Devils eliminate the Rangers and play the Islanders in round 2, I would hate both those teams. I'd root for them both to lose unsuccessfully because someone would have to win. But that would also be good also. If you could get a second round matchup with 2 of the 3 teams in the tri-state area, I think that would be good.
I don't know. Long Island's a little further out
and
there.
I agree with what Chris wrote in, which is to bet the under in every game in that series. I think the Carolina Islander game, which actually starts tonight, that game is the first game of the Stanley Cup playoffs. That's the first game that will happen. That's tonight at 7. That series has written 2-1 games all over it, 1-1 going into overtime, 3-1 with an empty netter. I agree. The Islanders are not the most offensive team and they are getting Barzell back. So I'm telling you, I like the Islanders in that series. So heading out west, let's start with the Colorado Avalanche, the defending Stanley Cup champion Colorado Avalanche hosting the Seattle Kraken. Nobody in the beginning of the year, in any preview, including here at MYPB, but anywhere I saw, had Seattle anywhere close to making the playoffs. And here they are making it and playing the defending Stanley Cup champions. Seattle is better than you think. You have to give Dave Haxtell, the coach there, he was been there now the 2 years they've been in existence, some credit. He didn't do very well when he was with the Flyers. Now, the Flyers hired him, if you remember, out of college. He was coaching college hockey at University of North Dakota for a while. But he's done very well with his team, but I don't see how the Seattle Kraken are going to beat the Colorado Avalanche. Colorado in 5 in this series for me is where I would go. The Dallas Stars at Minnesota Wild is an interesting series. Peter DeBoer, first year Dallas Stars. Peter DeBoer reminds me of Gerard Gallant, where when he goes somewhere, the first year is always really good, and then it just kind of slowly gets a little bit worse. So the Dallas Stars are home against the Minnesota Wild in the series. I like the Wild. I just do. I think the Wild are good. I've seen them a couple times. I saw them beat the Devils a couple weeks ago. The Rangers games with them, I was impressed with Minnesota, although one of them was the second game of the season. But I think Minnesota's pretty good. I really do. I like Minnesota to upset this series in either 6 or 7. I'm going to go 7. So I'm going to say Minnesota in 7 in this series. The next series is the Golden Knights and the Winnipeg Jets. Winnipeg hired Rick Bowness, who left Dallas. He kind of turned it around. Although he inherited kind of a messy situation that Paul Maurice left him when he went to South Florida. I just think Vegas is a better team here. Winnipeg's a good story. I get it. I'm going Vegas in 6 in this series. Now, the last series I want to pay attention to for a minute because I'm going to give you a little insight.
A little history lesson?
No, not history. A little insight beyond the first round prediction. I like the Edmonton Oilers to come out of the Western Conference. This is not because we had Jack Michaels, their play-by-play guy, on a couple weeks ago. I even said when I think we had DJ Raddick on, I just think that if Edmonton is, it's kind of like Toronto, but they're not at that crazy urgency yet. You have, again, McDavid having a great year, Draisaitl, all these guys up there. I just think I don't think there's a clear cut. Like Colorado is not Colorado of last year. I just think if I'm Edmonton, I can get out of the Western Conference finally, and you could have a Canadian team representing. Well, I guess Montreal was in it 2 years ago in that bubble season, but you can get a Canadian team in a real Stanley Cup Finals. I like Edmonton to come out of the West. I really do. So I like Edmonton in this series in 6 games. So I'm going to do that. So now we'll take it a couple steps further. I think out of the Western Conference, Edmonton comes out of it. I just do. And then if we go to the Eastern Conference, it's very, very hard for me to come up with an argument to say that the Bruins do not represent the Eastern Conference. They had a record-setting season. Their third line, they are so deep that their third line could be first lines on other teams. I just don't know how I don't pick Boston to come out of the East. Now, of course, look, I want to be wrong. We all know why I want to be wrong. But who in my mind can match up with them in a 7-game series? The other thing that worries me is they're probably going to go through Florida in 5. So they're not going to be, playing 7-game series here. Maybe their second round series versus whoever wins Toronto. Tampa goes 6 games, maybe 7. But I don't think they're getting a massive challenge early. And we saw last year with Colorado, who went through the first couple of rounds, piece of cake. I think we're looking at a Boston and Edmonton Stanley Cup final. I do. Now, again, I would love to be wrong, but I'm not here to just tell you everything. Rangers are great. Rangers are great. Rangers are great. I think the Rangers have issues. And as I told you, I think the first series versus the Devils in some ways is a flip a coin series. So if I got through that, I then have to get through either Carolina or the Islanders, which I think they could, but then you'd have to deal with probably Boston. I don't know. It's a tall task, man.
So Stanley Cup playoffs, man.
I like Boston and Edmonton in the Cup, and now I'm going to surprise you and tell you that in the Cup final, I like Edmonton to win it.
Wow.
Edmonton. When we had Jack Michaels on a couple weeks ago, the Edmonton play-by-play guy, he was actually in Boston because the teams were playing, and Edmonton can hang with them. Edmonton's speed is exactly what I think can give them fits. So, any thoughts on the Panthers' comments to the Bruins and how they will break them down? I saw that the other day. Just that the Panthers kind of talking it up. Yeah, I guess you have to be somewhat optimistic, but I don't need to incite the giant. I don't need to get them any more riled than they are. Again, other than Matthew Tkachuk, and I know, and this is another comment I see we didn't bring it up. It was that Bobrovsky. Can Bobrovsky outplay the Bruins for 4 games and stand on his head? I just don't think so. To me, I think that is the most least appealing first round series. Now, I could be wrong because, look, the Stanley Cup playoffs, and I'll use a local reference like Fairleigh Dickinson in the NCAA tournament in your hometown of Hackensack, New Jersey. Crazy things can happen. I mean, would it be the upset of the century if Florida eliminated the Bruins? No. We've seen top seeds get taken out in the Stanley Cup playoffs first round all the time. But I just don't, I don't know. I just don't see it there. Whatever team you root for, enjoy it. It's the Stanley Cup playoffs are awesome. I mean, they are. And I think in some ways the first round is the best because you get 4 games a night. Then it'll dwindle down to 2 games a night the next round. Then you get 1 game a night, the Eastern and Western Conference Finals. Then you get like 1 game in the Stanley Cup Finals every other day or every third day. So my prediction is Edmonton over Boston in the Stanley Cup. What do you think?
I think the Rangers are going to win it all.
Yep. From your mouth to God's ears.
That's my prediction.
Now, should I be upset that the guy who thinks the Rangers are going to win it all is the guy who said they're going to just win Game 7 in a shootout 20 minutes ago?
Yeah, but if the Devils win, I think whoever wins the Devils Rangers series is going to win it all.
Yeah. Why can you put that comment up? Because this is also just right in line with what I said, which is that the Islanders Hurricanes will probably be the most uneventful series. Uneventful, I think, is in the sense, Chris, there where it's just low scoring, right? It's not going to be high scoring games. If you like defense, it's an eventful series for you. And I would agree with you, Chris. I think the Islanders are going to win that series. And I think, like I said, I do not bet hockey. I don't do it,
Yeah.
even with not even the Rangers. But if I was a betting man, the Islanders series line, that's a great payout in a series that they can win. So
All right.
we shall see. So game 1 underway tomorrow night at the Rock in Newark, New Jersey. If you're a Ranger fan listening to this, I want to say
Calling all Ranger fans.
Calling all Ranger fans.
Wow.
If you're like one of these people that have been texting me for tickets in the last week, I won't mention names, but there's a bunch of them actually. I would rather you spend the money that you would spend on tickets and go to the Rock. You need more Ranger. You're going to have a sea of blue at Madison Square Garden.
Wow.
Go the 10-minute further drive. Well, I guess it depends where you're coming from. And go to Newark. The tickets are a little bit cheaper. Now, they're not cheap. For the Devils playoffs, it's expensive. It's $280, I think, to get in.
$300.
Yeah, okay. So it's probably $300 after fees. For a Devils first round game is a ton of money, but it's only a ton of money because they're playing the Rangers. If the Devils ended up playing Florida, you would be probably walking up that day. But we have a Garrett Bedrin. I think we need to pull it up. Our other hockey maven. Good luck to both teams. Great for the New York area. And I agree with Garrett completely. And we had a clip on this, Garrett. I don't know if you saw it, that if the Rangers did end up playing the Devils, they would be good for the tri-state area. There's another one. Someone sounds desperate for an advantage by Brian. I'm not. Brian
all
is
Rangers fans.
Brian is a Devil fan. I'm just saying, if you're going to spend the money, go spend it at the Rock. Get a little home ice advantage there. And Garrett is right. It is sounds cheap for Warriors prices. And Garrett would know. He used to work for the Warriors. And his Golden State Warriors. Garrett, I hope you're still listening. I want to say one thing. Saturday night, I was watching basketball because I was into the Knicks.
Yeah.
So I was watching the Warriors and Kings game, right? And in the second quarter, the Warriors were up at one point by like 2 points.
Mm-hmm.
And I was looking on DraftKings. And in live betting, that game was a pick'em. So stupid me, this is why I don't cover basketball, says to myself, wait a second. This game is the Warriors are going to win. It's the Warriors. Who's on Sacramento, right? So I didn't put a ton of money, but on live betting, I put it on Warriors. Then they were up like 6.5 and they blew it. They lost. So Garrett's Warriors now, and I think they'll still win that series, but they're down.
Every home team, I believe, lost game 1 of the NBA playoffs.
Not everyone. Philadelphia won and Boston won.
Well, then something happened.
Yesterday Memphis lost to the Lakers, and now John Morant may be out. Giannis Antetokounmpo hurt his back, but I don't think that's serious.
Yeah. It wasn't that serious.
And then last night, Phoenix lost at home to the Clippers. You're right. So I don't know, Garrett. Garrett will never be worried about his Warriors. He's always super confident, but he can't like losing game 1. But like I said before, game 1s are not always indicative of how the series ends.
True.
So, well, enjoy the Stanley Cup playoffs. We'll be back on live next Tuesday. We'll be on the morning after game 4, which I would expect if I was a betting man, but I'm not, that it would be 2-2 the way this series sounds like it's going to go. Sit back, relax, enjoy the games. We thank MYPB. We thank the Bamboozle Project, as always, for their sponsorship. Check them out, thebamboozleproject.com. Use promo code MYPB. Save yourself a whopping 25% off. Dougie, enjoy the games this week. Everyone at home, enjoy the games, and we'll talk to you next week.